All right, today we are diving into this really profound idea about what it truly takes to change. And we're going to explore two very different paths to transformation drawn from a really fascinating spiritual text. And I'll tell you right now, one of them is probably not what you're expecting. So let's get into it. So, I want to start with a question that gets right to the heart of what we're talking about today. Just think about it for a second. What do you think requires a deeper, more profound level of commitment? Is it holding on to who you are when your back is against the wall? Or is it feeling this deep ache for the brokenness of the world, even when your own life is actually going great? Just keep that question in the back of your mind as we go through this. So, where does this all come from? Well, the source text for this idea starts with a kind of historical puzzle, something we can call the Purim paradox. It's all about the ancient Jewish people's acceptance of the Torah. Now, the story goes that they accepted it twice, under completely different circumstances. And it's the second time, which happened under unbelievable pressure, that's seen as the more powerful moment. And the big question is, why? And this is where it gets really interesting. Just look at the contrast here. On one hand, you have the revelation at Mount Sinai. We're talking spectacular miracles, a direct, awe-inspiring moment with the divine. But the text kind of suggests their yes then wasn't fully baked. Then, centuries later, during the events of Purim, they're facing total annihilation, literally a genocide. And it was then, in that moment of absolute terror, that they reaffirmed their commitment in a way that was seen as way more profound. I mean, how can a promise made under that kind of duress be greater than one inspired by miracles? That's the paradox we're here to figure out. Okay, so the answer to this whole thing, it really lies in a single, powerful metaphor that just unlocks the entire concept, and that's the idea of being crushed for the light. The key term we need to know is the Hebrew word katit. It literally means crushed or beaten. It's the exact same word used to describe how you'd crush olives to get the absolute purest, clearest oil for the menorah in the ancient temple. So the source uses this as a metaphor. When you're put under pressure, the very essence of your soul, the purest part of who you are, can be revealed. And this, right here, is where it gets absolutely crucial. The source explains that the spiritual crushing isn't just one thing. It can actually happen in two fundamentally different ways, which lead to two very different kinds of revelation. Let's take a look at the first path. So first up, we've got the path that's more intuitive, right? The one that just immediately makes sense to us. This is the cat that happens when your faith, your very identity, comes under direct attack. So this type of crushing, it's kicked off by some kind of external crisis. It produces an act of what's called Messirut Nefesh, which is just this total self-sacrifice. And according to the source, this doesn't come from your conscious mind or your emotions. Nope. It just erupts from the absolute core of your soul, a place that's beyond any kind of logic or reason. It's this powerful, almost involuntary response. And this quote just nails it perfectly. A person in this state, they can't explain their actions logically. They're not sitting there weighing the pros and cons. It's just this overwhelming urge from a place so deep inside they feel like they have no other choice. It's a revelation that comes crashing in, from above. But, and this is a big but, here's the limitation. While this force is absolutely immense, the source describes it as something that passes through a person without fully permeating them. Their mind and their heart don't really integrate the experience. So yeah, it overpowers the self, but it doesn't necessarily transform the self from the inside out. Okay, so that brings us to the second, and honestly, the far more subtle path. This is a kind of crushing that happens not during a crisis, but in a time of peace and plenty. This is what we're calling the ache of abundance. The context for this path is a state of harhava, which is Hebrew for expansion or abundance. So I want you to picture a life where things are going pretty well. You've got what you need, materially speaking, and you have the freedom and the space to grow spiritually. There's no enemy at the gates. So you might be asking, well, where does the crushing come from then? See, it's not from personal pain. Instead, it's a deep, conscious sensitivity. It's that ache you feel when you can clearly see the gap between the world as it could be, that profound spiritual truth you understand, and the world as it is, with all of its chaos and confusion. And that right there is the absolute game changer. The cry isn't, oh, why is my life so hard? It's a totally selfless cry that asks, how can ultimate truth stay so hidden in the world? The source actually calls this feeling the divine pain. It's like an empathetic ache for a reality that hasn't yet reached its ultimate purpose. So now we can finally put these two paths side by side, and we can really start to see why that second one is considered so much more profound. It's really the difference between a light that breaks in from the outside and a light that starts to glow from deep within. This slide just lays it all out so clearly, doesn't it? Path 1 is triggered by an external threat, and it results in this unexplained urge, a revelation from above. Path 2 is triggered internally by your own sensitivity, and it results in a totally understood pain, a revelation from within. One forges this unbreakable bond born of crisis, but the other, it creates a true clarity of soul. To put it another way, that first kind of revelation, it's like a lightning strike. It's powerful, it's undeniable, but it's an external event. The second kind? That's more like a seed that's growing from within. It's a transformation that is fully integrated, it's understood by your mind and felt by your heart, precisely because it started inside you in the first place. And this brings us to the ultimate payoff. The source argues that this second path, this internal conscious crushing, is where true, lasting transformation, what it calls redemption, actually begins. So, what does this path actually look like in practice? Well, first, you have to cultivate that sensitivity. You have to let yourself feel the ache. Then, the yearning that comes out of it has to be selfless. It's for the sake of truth itself, not for you. And when that cry is completely pure, the source says the final husk of the ego just falls away on its own. And that moment right there is the spark for real conscious redemption. And this is exactly why this path is considered a higher level. It's proactive, not reactive. You're not just waiting around for a disaster to force you to change. It's about actively developing a spiritual and moral sensitivity so profound, so real, that it simply cannot tolerate a broken world. It begins to demand and to create a better one. So we end right back where we started, but with a totally new perspective. This text presents a powerful challenge that maybe the deepest transformation doesn't come from surviving the fire, but from feeling the world's ache even when we're standing in the warmth of our own good fortune. It leaves us with this final lingering thought. What would actually happen if we stopped waiting for a crisis to transform us and started cultivating the sensitivity to transform ourselves?